It's Nick's Halloween Spooktacular. Okay, the last one I'm doing for this year is, in my personal opinion, the greatest horror movie ever made. The Exorcist. It's the story of a sweet, innocent girl who gets possessed by the devil. I hate to say it, but this is another movie that I like better than the book. The novel by William Peter Blatty is interesting in its own right, but it has these weird, half-finished sentences and dialogue that goes nowhere. It gives the book a kind of dreamy, surreal tone, which I guess is what it was going for, but to me at least, it makes it hard to follow the story. However, they re-released the book in 2011 for a 40th anniversary edition, which supposedly polished the prose and dialogue, even suggesting that the original novel was little more than a first draft. And that's the way it feels, like a choppy first draft. The story is based on the supposedly true exorcism of Roland Doe, a pseudonym of the boy possessed. He was a little shut-in, developing a close relationship with his aunt, who taught him how to use a Ouija board. The aunt died, and he allegedly tried to contact her through the use of the mystical board, and that's when Satan took hold. He displayed a violent, angry temperament, strange noises were heard throughout the house, small objects levitated off the ground and were smashed against the walls, weird shit was going down. He was taken to a hospital where he observed that his condition got even worse, allowing him to speak in languages he didn't know, attack people, and all around make a nuisance of himself. He was eventually granted the rite of an exorcism, and after several rituals were performed, there was a loud bang that reverberated throughout the hospital, and the boy went back to normal. There's a lot of debate as to its authenticity, but that doesn't matter, as what's important is that it struck up William Blatty's imagination and helped him produce the story of Reagan. No, not that Reagan, but that would be awesome too. She messes around with a Ouija board and gets possessed, but not all at once. The devil slowly taking hold of her as her behavior begins to mount and mount. One thing I like better in the novel than the film is that, well, for one, it took several months for her to go through the whole thing rather than a week or so in the film. The other thing is that the supernatural elements were more downplayed, and they're only lifting a few objects off the ground and levitating herself, and certainly not spinning her head around. Well, there's one scene where the mother kind of sees it, but she's supposed to be fainting at the time, so you don't know how real it is. In the movie, these things make it hard to forget that she might not be possessed, which is the whole point of this story. One thing that bugged me with it was that the priest keeps using psychological terms to describe what she's going through, preventing the exorcism from happening, that strange goings-on might be mere symptoms of her underlying psychological condition. It gives the events a plausibility accentuated by the priest having lost his faith in the girl thinking she's been possessed. The problem is that he does it for so long, it becomes a question of, if she thinks she's so possessed, why not just perform the exorcism for her? It might work. But then I realized that's what it wants you to think. It wants you to forget rational thought like you might hold on to, and all this scientific inquiry becomes mumbo-jumbo, and you have to start believing that there's something else to it. The making of the film is just as interesting as the film itself, with the people being yanked around in harnesses so hard they suffered injuries from it, using their genuine screams of pain for the film, slapping people in the face to make them look mad. He even fired a gun off at one point to scare an actor. In the famous pea soup scene, the director told the actor it would only hit him in the chest, so his reaction of disgust is quite real. When you see them at the end in the ice-cold room with their breath visible, it's not CGI or some kind of optical effect. It was really that cold, everyone behind the camera having to wear cold-weather gear for it. In addition to that, one of the actors who died in the film died in real life not long before it came out. All these occurrences led to people thinking that the film was cursed, and who can blame them? Maybe there was a Ouija board on set. Blatty followed the novel up with Legion in 1983. The story features a serial killer in an insane asylum based on the real-life Zodiac killer who praised the Exorcist film as the greatest satirical comedy I have ever seen. Maybe I'm too old and cynical, but that just sounds like he's trying too hard. Not that I advocate mass murder. Anyway, this was turned into the film The Exorcist 3, directed by Blatty himself. Now I know what you're thinking. What about Part 2? Well, it came out back in the late 70s, having neither the author nor director from the first film involved, and being directed by a guy who didn't like the original. Remember that scene in the first movie with the shit-covered statue of Mary? I like to think of this movie as that shit. There you go, shortest review ever. There were also 2 prequels to the film, which I'm not even going to get into. It's another case of big money creeping its way into a good film, the way the icy fingers of Satan took hold of this little girl and our minds as well. It's not just that the film is gory and disgusting, which it certainly is, but it's the terror behind it that really digs deep into our minds. It's both a gore fest and a terrifying look at what might happen to us in the end. Other monsters aren't as scary. You can defeat them in some fashion. You can run away from a vampire or a serial killer, but you can't outrun the devil. You have to believe in it to fight it. You have to believe that God exists and that good can conquer over evil to save the girl and put her in her place. You can't believe in God without believing in the devil, and that's the ultimate fear. Whether or not you've placed your faith in the right hand or the wrong one, and if you've gone bad in your life, you'll end up in hell with Father Karras and all the rest. There's no greater fear than the fear of God.